Before the headlines and the hand-wringing, there was a simple truth. Meghan and Jessica looked like a perfectly matched duo. Toronto set the stage, shared circles, shared ambition, and a rhythm that felt effortless. While Meghan was building momentum on screen, Jessica was already fluent in the language of fashion, media, and influence. Together, they weren't just friends grabbing coffee, they were a pipeline of access. One phone call from Jessica opened doors. One appearance by Meghan made those doors matter. What made the pairing powerful was how naturally their strengths overlapped. Jessica knew stylists, editors, publicists, the people who control the temperature of a story. Meghan knew how to turn that heat into presence. Interviews, charity events, an image sharpened by smart choices. When Harry entered the frame, the friendship didn't fade. It scaled. Wedding fittings, guest lists, glossy coverage, Jessica's fingerprints were visible in the details, and Meghan's profile rose in ways that felt coordinated without looking forced. This is where the brand building really happened. Meghan's style notes became headlines. Jessica's counsel turned into magazine pages and red carpet moments. The two were frequently name-checked together, and that repetition matters. Audiences don't just remember what they see, they remember who stood next to whom when the photo was taken. For a time, Meghan and Jessica moved like a single narrative. The actress with a cause, the stylist with a Rolodex, both navigating a world where optics are oxygen. But synergy has a cost. When partnerships shape public identity, fractures echo louder. The same closeness that amplified Meghan and Jessica is why the distance later felt seismic. And that's where the story pivots. From a friendship that built a brand to a year when everything they built was stress-tested in public. But that wasn't the whole story. The turn came fast. Jessica clashed publicly with influencer Sasha Exeter, and the conversation exploded beyond two people and a DM thread. Brands weighed in, headlines multiplied, screenshots traveled faster than context. In a summer already charged with emotion, the optics were brutal. The fallout didn't just nick a reputation, it rewired how audiences saw Jessica, and by extension, anyone standing close. Meghan was suddenly in a no-win maze. Stand up for Jessica, and she'd be accused of endorsing the worst read of the moment. Stay silent, and people would say she abandoned a friend. For a woman already living inside a microscope, the margins were thin. Meghan's name appeared in the discourse whether she spoke or not. Harry wasn't the subject, but he was never far from the narrative either. The royal halo pulls every orbiting story into view. Public moves told their own story. Jessica issued apologies. Partnerships paused or ended. Meghan kept distance in the open, at least from what the public could see. Privately, only the people in the chats know. What viewers remember is the sensation. One week they were a unit. The next, it felt like the floor dropped out. The friendship that once looked bulletproof suddenly had a timeline and a cliff. But endings are rarely clean. Threads remained, mutual contacts, shared memories, and a decade of overlap that doesn't evaporate because a feed goes quiet. And that's why today's chatter lands so hard. If Jessica ever speaks at length, she wouldn't be starting from zero. She'd be starting from a year everyone already remembers. And the rumors say that's exactly where the next shock begins. Here's where the air gets electric. Entertainment blogs and royal watch threads keep circling the same idea. Jessica has been approached for a book that puts everything on the record. Some posts go bigger. Whispers of a 7-figure offer, publishers circling, and a draft that reads more like a thriller than a diary. None of it is confirmed, but the story keeps regenerating because the premise is irresistible. The friend who sat next to Meghan at the biggest moments might finally speak. The claims shift depending on who's talking. One side insists Jessica won't touch a tell-all. Too messy, too permanent, too risky. Another side argues the opposite, that she wants her version documented, that she's tired of being a footnote, that a careful, lawyer-proof account could reset her reputation. In the middle is the only thing we actually know. Meghan and Jessica shared rooms, calls, fittings, and fallout. If a manuscript exists, it wouldn't be guesswork. If it doesn't, the rumor itself still does damage. This is why Harry ends up mentioned even when he's not the headline. A true insider account would inevitably brush against the Netflix era, the doc, the memoir, and the strategy people think they see in hindsight. For fans of Meghan, the idea feels invasive. For critics, it feels like validation. For everyone else, it's rubbernecking in real time. Rumors don't need evidence to trend. They just need timing. And the timing here keeps sinking with every small ripple in the Sussex news cycle. So what's real? As of now, there's no verified deal, no publisher announcement, no official chapter tease. But that's not the same as quiet. The chatter around Jessica and Meghan keeps ratcheting up because audiences sense stakes. If a book is coming, the first excerpt could reshape the narrative overnight. If it isn't, the speculation still pressures the brand Meghan and Harry are defending. And that pressure matters even more when contracts, renewal clocks, and public sentiment are all ticking at once. Brands don't wait for court verdicts. They watch momentum. Meghan and Harry built a media lane with documentaries, speeches, and partnerships that depend on trust as much as talent. Even unverified chatter about a Jessica tell-all nudges decision-makers to ask quiet questions. Is the next headline supportive or scorching? Do we launch now or let the dust settle? The Netflix era turned the couple into appointment viewing, but attention is a double-edged mic. If a former insider suggests there are unseen notes, messages, or strategy talks, the perception shifts fast. Executives hate uncertainty. Marketers hate risk. And once a rumor starts trending, spreadsheets change, even if no one says it out loud. That's the uncomfortable truth. A single narrative swing can move meetings, calendars, and money. For Meghan, the personal brand and the public mission are intertwined. Style moments, charity work, on-camera candor, they reinforce a story that audiences can believe in. A loud rumor doesn't erase that work, but it forces teams to play defense. Meanwhile, Harry ends up pulled into the frame. Not because he's the subject this time, but because every partner knows how narratives cross-pollinate. One shaky storyline can shake the other, and that's why this cycle feels different. It isn't just gossip, it's gravity. If Jessica truly stays silent, the orbit calms and the deals breathe. If she speaks, even carefully, the next quarter looks different for everyone involved. But before we talk numbers, there's one book that already rewired the conversation, and its shadow is still long. When Spare landed, it wasn't just a book, it was a battleground. Harry offered raw recollections, and readers split into camps. Those who felt the candor, and those who questioned the details. Memoirs do that. They're memory stitched to meaning, and memory is slippery. The presence of a seasoned ghostwriter didn't end the debate, it sharpened it. Every anecdote became a litmus test for what people already believed about Harry and Meghan. That context matters now. If a Jessica account ever appears, it would be measured against Spare instantly. Not just for facts, but for framing. Who assigns motive? Who edits emotion? Who decides what a late-night conversation really meant? Meghan would inevitably be read as architect or actress depending on the lens the reader brings. Harry would be pulled back into scrutiny he thought he'd already survived, and audiences would do what they always do: compare quotes, cross-check timelines, and pick sides. There's a bigger truth beneath the noise. Narratives are negotiations. Spare negotiated Harry's lived experience with the public record. A Jessica narrative, if it exists, would negotiate proximity with privacy. That doesn't make one truer than the other. It makes both partial and powerful, because proximity offers receipts and blind spots in the same breath. The closer you are, the more you see, and the more you assume. So the question isn't just whether Jessica speaks, it's what her voice would do to the balance established since Spare. Would she confirm the version where Meghan is strategic and misunderstood, or redraw it so sharply that sponsors flinch? Would Harry look like a partner in the plan or a passenger? Those answers, if they ever arrive, won't just update a timeline. They'll reset how every future headline is read. And that's why the next hypothetical isn't hype. It's the stakes, distilled. Imagine waking up to a leaked chapter. Overnight, feeds would split into told you so and not buying it. Meghan would trend first, Harry second, and Jessica would go from footnote to focal point in a single refresh. Editors would mine every line for a headline, Brands would quietly move meetings, and the first 24 hours would decide whether the story burns out or becomes the month's main character. On the reputational front, the blast radius is obvious. If Jessica presents detailed calendars, messages, or call notes, the conversation shifts from vibe to verification. If her claims read more like impressions, Meghan gains ground by holding steady. Either way, Harry gets pulled into the crosswind. People won't just ask what Meghan planned, they'll ask what Harry approved, what he knew, and when the couple agreed to push or pause. That's how public stories work. One name drags the other into the frame. Business follows sentiment. A swelling wave of coverage would make partners risk scan everything connected to Meghan and Harry. Active campaigns, cued releases, future pitches. Some would double down on the couple's reach. Others would slow roll until the dust settles. This isn't moral judgment, it's momentum management. In a climate where attention is currency, even rumors change the exchange rate for a few news cycles. And then comes the counter-narrative. If Meghan responds with receipts of her own, or chooses disciplined silence, she reshapes the arc. If Jessica stays precise and measured, she sustains credibility. If either side overplays, the public spots it. That's the razor's edge. The story doesn't end with a drop. It begins with how both women handle the next 3 moves. But this isn't only about outcomes. It's also about motives and why anyone would risk going on the record at all. Every rumor begs the same question: why now? For Jessica, the upside is obvious. Control the narrative that once sprinted away from her. A carefully written account could reframe the Sasha Exeter era, show context the internet never saw, and restore a reputation that took public hits. There's also the practical piece. After years in the industry, a serious sourced memoir would move units, reopen doors, and remind publishers she isn't a supporting character in someone else's story. That's a lot of incentive, especially when her name gets dragged into royal discourse without her saying a word. But the cost column is just as real. Put anything on paper and you freeze it in time. Lawyers read it, critics parses it, and friendships don't survive footnotes. Meghan isn't just a former friend, she's a global lightning rod. Once Jessica pins her perspective to a page, she's married to that version in every interview, on every panel, for years. If she overreaches, the blowback won't be a weekend of bad press. It'll be a brand identity that says, "the one who went there," fair or not. And if there are private messages involved, ethical questions arrive quickly. What belongs to memory and what belongs to the vault? There's a middle path: precision. If Jessica ever speaks, the safest lane is narrowly sourced, legally scrubbed, emotionally restrained. No cheap shots, no grand claims, just the careful architecture of how 2 ambitious women built something together and watched it crack under pressure. That kind of account can land as credible rather than vindictive. It also signals to readers and to Harry and Meghan that this isn't a grenade, it's a ledger. Of course, silence is still a strategy. Staying quiet keeps options open and oxygen low. In an economy where attention is a commodity, Jessica can raise her stock by doing nothing more than being possible. That tension alone keeps her name in rotation. But tension accumulates interest, and sooner or later the market demands clarity, which is why the final chapter of this story, at least for now, is the hardest to write: the waiting. Right now, the loudest sound is the quiet. No publisher on record, no verified manuscript, just a cycle where Jessica trends because she might speak, and Meghan trends because she might be spoken about. That vacuum is powerful. It lets every camp project its favorite ending: vindication for Meghan, reckoning for Jessica, or a clean break where both simply move on. The reality sits somewhere less cinematic, behind closed doors, where advice is measured and every move is weighed against the next 5 headlines. For Meghan, discipline is a message. Staying steady signals confidence. It says the story can come and go without a counterpunch. For Harry, the calculation is similar. Don't amplify speculation that could fade on its own. But audiences read silence like it's a statement, and that's the tension of modern fame. The more carefully Meghan and Harry manage the pause, the more some viewers assume there's something to manage. The optics game never really ends, it just changes speed. Meanwhile, Jessica holds the strangest leverage: time. Every week she doesn't talk keeps curiosity high and stakes higher. If she's writing, the runway helps tighten facts and tone. If she isn't, the rumor still does the work for her, keeping her name warm without risking a single sentence. That's why waiting feels like strategy. It preserves optionality while the public writes rough drafts for you. But stalemates don't last forever. A single post, a small excerpt, a quiet denial, any one of those could reset the board overnight. Until then, the story isn't about what's in a book. It's about who controls anticipation. And in a world where attention chooses winners, that control might be the most valuable chapter of all. Which brings us to the only question left. How does this end? Strip away the noise and you're left with three people whose names keep rewriting each other's headlines: Meghan, Jessica, and Harry. The friendship built real momentum. The fallout built real questions. Everything after that, book offers, secret notes, unseen messages, lives in a gray zone where rumor and reality blur. That's why this story hooks people. It isn't just royalty, it's proximity. Who was in the room? And what does being in the room really mean? If a Jessica account ever surfaces, it won't just update facts. It will rearrange loyalties. Meghan has spent years crafting a message about purpose, resilience, and boundaries. Harry has staked his voice on honesty that costs something. A careful, documented narrative from Jessica could complement that picture, or challenge it line by line. Until someone prints pages, we're all reading between them. Here's the part most timelines skip. Two things can be true. Meghan can be strategic and sincere. Jessica can be wounded and measured. Harry can be both partner and protector. The internet treats nuance like a trick. Real life treats it like oxygen. If the next chapter arrives, the tone will matter as much as the text. Precision builds credibility. Performance kills it. So how does it end? Maybe with a book. Maybe with a single post that says, no. Maybe with silence that outlasts curiosity. For now, one question sits at the center. Whose version would you trust if all three spoke at once? Meghan's, Jessica's, or Harry's? Drop your take below. And if you want more coverage that separates what's confirmed from what's just circulating, hit subscribe. Because the moment anything real drops, we'll be here to read the first paragraph together.